topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hello and welcome to the new episode of Mindfulness in Action. And I'm welcoming you all to join me in a real Mindfulness in Action reflection. I'm going to be joined soon with my dear friend and the guest, Tristan, who is an engineer, entrepreneur. We met in China when he was a director of a Montessori school, and he was also managing one of the leading cafes in China, the bistro where community gathered. But more than anything else, he's really a community builder. And I love to learn from him. In the recent couple of years, he has transitioned into France, where he's originally from, and he's working on marine projects, a regenerative aquaculture initiative. And I'm really looking forward to learning and also sharing what his insights are about the ecosystem, community, and in general, where are we as humanity when it comes to marine culture? So, Tristan, welcome to the show, and so good to see you and see your smile.
Hi, Dalida.
I first want to appreciate that your family was considerate and allowed you to do this. I know that you are stretched with time and how dedicated you are to the community and your family. And it's always a stretch. I'm just curious, as we are warming up and as I'm introducing you to our listeners. How do you present yourself these days? What do you say?
Yeah, that's a good question, and sometimes it does change from who I'm talking to, so from one person to another. I had this same reflection recently, where it's not always that I can sort of I'm able to present myself, I would say, completely, and all the aspects that you mentioned with the Café de la Poste and the Montessori school, and because also, in certain cases, I also don't want to kind of like it may look too adventurous or too dispatched. So the way I cautiously present myself nowadays is that I'm the co-founder of an NGO called Le Paysan Marin, which could translate as the sea farmer. However, in French, paysan has the same roots as country and landscape, and so the pays, the paysage. And so it's not only about the production of primary goods. It's also about the one who takes care of its country, of its land, of its space, who manages that, who is the warden, if you will, of this space. So I'm the co-founder of this NGO that is focused on bridging the gap in between aquaculture, marine aquaculture, and sea crops production, and ecological marine restoration.
That's such a and pause, right? And now let's all just take all of that in. It seems like a big task. I just remember now when you were beginning to educate yourself into what really takes to do that. Could you share a little bit now, like for me, everything you shared just all makes sense, because at the core, I know you as someone who cares for the environment, for people, and really looks at how to bring the community together. So regardless of what kind of project you go into, I know that this really stays with you, and I really appreciate everything you do. So what does it take for one to focus on the sea culture and just to get into all that depth, water, and what it offers?
Sorry, I may ask you to ask you to repeat the end part of your question.
What does it take for one to begin to shift into that landscape?
So maybe we can go in a little chronological order. So as you know, and I spent 13 years in Beijing, and my last 3 years were during the time of the zero COVID policy, which was a heavy burden for a lot of us. And a lot of, again, restriction, and it was a challenging period for, again, everyone who was there. And so I had made a decision early on to give myself a year, to give our family a year, and then to leave China for a bit, because we wanted to kind of like live on our own terms. We wanted to not leave because we were feeling we didn't want to flee anything. So we said, okay, now it's time for us to take a break and to move back to France and to breathe for a little time. And so we did that, and we moved where we still had some family, which was an island on the Atlantic Ocean called Oléron, where my wife's family was living. And so we settled down in this small village. We had the skills going to the village school, which has 60 children, biking through the forest to get there. We were living nearby the sea. And then I remember my last year in Beijing, what kept me going was the idea of just a minute of silence and a bubble of nothingness before it starts all over again. So we decided to purposefully kind of cut all professional ties that we had in China. We sold whatever we could. We wanted, if we ever had to come back to China, and we were not closing that door, we wanted for it to be for new reasons, new things, not, oh, we need you back because we need you to fix this and this. We wanted a sort of a clean break. And so we arrived in France. We arrived on this island, and then for the first time in our adult life, it was like, so what do we do now? And everything was open, and it was really scary. Because then we had experience working in F&B, in restaurants. The island is very touristic. Do we go in that path? Both my wife and I had experience in education. So are we pursuing that again? We could try something new. Do we stay in France? Do we go back to China? Do we go to a new country? Everything was open. And then what felt important was the idea of trying to build a compass. We felt lost at the time, and I remember that the idea of building a compass, not to know where we need to arrive, but if we are sort of still on the right path, was a very, very important idea. And this is, I think, what led us to water, and then what led us to aquaculture. So it's a bit a scenic road to answer your question, but maybe I will pause there for.
Yeah, I mean, you just shared an experience where a lot of people are, even now, I think, feeling misplaced career-wise, even if they stay locally where they are. And I think your experience is really relevant and relatable. And definitely for that time for people who were moving from China to their other locations due to zero COVID policies. So it just refreshed my memory as well. And I know that we were connecting around that time when you were already deep into exploring and finding your path and setting up the NGO. And there is so little I personally know about how to live with water and from water. And I followed some articles that you were sharing on LinkedIn, and I'm really fascinated on how much diversity there is. And I'm going to go straight into the point of my curiosity, and that is oysters. You know, I have a feeling that we could probably talk a lot about how oysters actually come into equation of living in balance with water. So let's just please educate me and us
Sure.
on that lovely dish. I mean, I love oysters, but they're so important
Yeah.
for everything that is going on in the water, right?
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. So when I arrived and when I started this discovery, I, same as you, knew almost nothing about, again, oysters. I was raised not too far from the sea, but again, we had no very strong connection. I didn't go sailing or whatever. So I'm not someone who comes from a very long tradition of this question. So I came with new eyes, and at the beginning it was a bit daunting because in this field a lot of times you have people who are, again, born and raised in this, and so arriving there was just asking a lot of maybe stupid questions. So oysters, they are, again, well known for as a delicacy. They are actually one of the most grown water species in the on Earth after macroalgae, which are the first one, and we have plenty different subspecies across the world. One which is very dominating, and one maybe first thing that I remember I was surprised was that the oysters that we have in most places of Europe are Asian oysters. They have been brought to Europe about 70 years ago because the oysters that we used to grow all went almost extinct. And so in order to save the oyster farmers in France first and then developed in the rest of Europe, then we actively imported oyster spat from Asia. And so oysters, again, the most what I knew, what most people know are like, okay, it's maybe an acquired taste, and it's a fancy sort of like food. However, again, for many centuries and still in many countries, it's more of a commodity. It's something that thrive on the shore, that cannot run away from you, that's full of protein. And so one thing that, again, surprised me is that all across the world, wherever in the northern hemisphere especially, we used to have oyster reefs. like we are familiar with coral reefs, and we've seen many pictures, and we are engaged, and we need to do more to preserve and conserve them. But in Europe, in the North America, in Northern Asia, all of our shores used to be protected and bordered by these reefs, because oysters, so they need to stick themselves to one another to grow, and they build their own environment. They build their shells, and once they die, they become a collector for new spat that will grow on them. And so time after time, it will become bigger and bigger. And this is something that we do not have a lot of images on, especially in Europe. However, in Northern America, where I would say intensive exploitation of these elements have arrived later, then they have pictures and they have tales of like mountains in estuaries that were threatening sailing, and those were not rocks. Those were breathing creatures. Those were filtering creatures, because one single oysters can filter up to 200 liters of water every single day. Meaning that everything that was passing through the river and that was coming to the sea was already epurated in some sense. There was less particles in the water, so that means more light can come in. That means the plant can grow better, and that means that more carbon can be again captured and possibly stored later on. So they were extremely present in making the environment around them very healthy, and we ate them all.
Oh, you mentioned a couple of things. One is that it was an obstacle to sailing, right? So what happens from what you just shared? Such an important one single oyster can do so much for the environment. And so what happens when we eat them all? So when the human comes into such a chain of healthy ecosystem, could you share the downside of that?
So that is what especially happened in Europe, let's say, where again it was a very accessible, common source of food. And so again, every image we have about oyster farming is very, very recent. Even like in everything with bags, or what you may have seen from all lines in the water, any type of culture is extremely, it's only 100 years old or so. Because before, the common way, and it was still practiced, and it is still practiced in certain areas of the world, like Florida was doing that in the early 2000s. You just take a boat and you take like a long stick or something, and then you break part of the reef and you get the oysters, and then you separate them, and that's it. You are not growing anything, you are just picking out of the reef. You are harvesting that. A little bit more like fishing, let's say. And so the more you do that, then the less oysters you have, and then the less diversity in the oysters you have for them to reproduce. And so once a population of any living being becomes very small, then you have less genetic diversity, and then often you are more exposed to certain pathogens. So this is exactly what happened. So the population shrunk just because it was overexploited, and then diseases happen and then reduce that population even more. So this is, at a certain point, we arrived at a tipping point where everything kind of like fell down in a way. And this is where in like the farmers first had a new species coming from Portugal, and then the one that we are mostly growing now from Asia. So what happens then is that one of the key elements also that I did not mention with oyster reefs is that, again, they are one of the very, very, very few marine species that is building solid elements for things to hide in or grow on. Macroalgae, seaweeds, they do not have roots. So they have some kind of cup, and then they need to have a rock or they need to have a solid thing to grow on. If there is only sand, then they cannot develop themselves. Young animals like shrimps or even fish fry, then when they are too young, they need to have a place to hide. If you have only sand at the bottom of the sea, then it's a very, very dangerous place, because any predator can see you and eat you when you are very young. So with these simple oysters disappearing, then you lose the seaweed, you lose these forests, you lose the hiding spots for the young ones, and then at some point it doesn't become a place where fishes will reproduce, and you lose all the biodiversity that you have there.
So simple, right? That the whole chain of downfall, and I'm just the sense of interconnectedness and the consciousness of people, how important it is. Hoping once when we understand the chain that we can actually adjust our behavior. So what is it that you are really doing now with all that knowledge and information? How are you and your team creating change?
So the first part, I think, is just I mentioned when I arrived, I has this fear that, again, I do not know anything about this field of aquaculture. This is not my my field of expertise before, and what I did without really planning it, what I started to do was just expressing my wonder at what I was discovering. So this is what I actually started to do. I am learning, and I started to post things online on social networks, LinkedIn mostly, and others. But that was really more about me saying, hey, today I discovered that oysters, they filter 200 liters of water every single day. Those are unsung heroes. And by doing that repeatedly on different, again, aspects of this field, I saw that my absence of pre-existing knowledge was an advantage, because it helped me discriminate in between what was wonderful from what was mundane for people who had 10, 15, 40 years of expertise in the field. And also they were happy to see me doing that, because they were like, oh, it's true. Yeah, I never saw it like that. Oh, it's nice that someone is picking that up. And also I was feeling that I was bridging a gap in between the experts and the people like you, like me, who are just discovering, and that's really cool. I didn't know that. And so that is the first step that I did, just, again, putting into words, or like pinpointing things that this is really interesting. We should do more about that. And by doing that, I started, I think, also to connect with people from different worlds, and from producers, researchers, people who are caring for the environment. And all of those words, often they do not speak the same language. For people who are growers, then again, they feel like environmental constraints are just that, constraints, or I cannot walk wherever I want, I cannot do the practice the same way my father or my grandfather or grandmother used to. I do not feel recognized, but I've been taking care of that land, of that space, and now it's the state or whoever administration that is telling me that I can or cannot do this. I need to fill up paperwork. And on the other way, like, yeah, if we leave you alone, you do not respect the environment, you do not have the knowledge of. And the researchers are like, yeah, we need to research, but we are researching for not for research, that's not true, but the time that they have until they get something that they say this is the truth is infinite. So when these people talk to one another, there is a lot of misunderstanding, frictions, and everyone at some point becomes kind of defensive. Yeah, but this is what I do. I am looking after the environment. Well, me, I'm looking about my family because I need to provide a living to them. And me, well, I'm here to get more in depth into this specific field. So until I get there, I cannot tell you what you need to do to make things better. So we had everyone, and what we started trying to do is, it's funny, but you placed it like that at the beginning, was just build a community and trying to connect people, because not everyone wants to work in the same direction. Some people in the environmental conservation world do not care about oysters at all. They love birds, or they love this specific, and they do not they place their criteria is this is above everything else, which again is fair. This is the way that they perceive the world and that they arrange everything. And others, producers or scientists, then they all have their own, again, compass and criteria. What we tried to do was to align the ones who were kind of sharing the same vision around, like, maybe there is a middle ground, maybe there's a middle way that is kind of like not the best for only one, but an optimum for the different aspects. And maybe we can talk together and work together into looking for solutions. So this is what we've started doing, connecting communities that are, again, we cannot take credit at this level, like they are still talking to one another, and they were doing that far before we arrived. But on those aspects of, again, linking the production to ways it can also restore the ecosystem services, and it can be beneficial to the environment, and also it is known by consumers and by people who are outside of this world. This and has been perceived as something new, something that hadn't been done before. Using that voice and gathering people like that who all wanted to go in that direction.
It sounds like a matrix that you're using, the marine matrix that is working so well together, right? Like, so for the little ones to hide, for the algae to also be able to grow, and then realizing that above the surface of water, there's this human world where we're all separate and not really seeing how it all goes with such great intentions. And I have a feeling that that's happening. Well, there's definitely happening in many aspects of human life. So what are you learning at the moment? Where are you landing with all of that work that you have done in the past couple of years?
So, well, we keep asking a lot of questions. We keep learning a lot. I was just, again, I was meeting with some scientists in Brittany earlier yesterday. I just came back to the island today, actually. The idea, again, that we are pursuing is, or the focus that we have is really, once you once you start doing some restoration, and then you let's say that you are restoring oyster reefs, and now, because if it disappeared one way, then probably what the influence we can have by doing that single act can have also great ramifications. So let's say that we rebuild oyster reefs they will not restart on their own if there is nothing for the spat to stick on. If there is only sand, if there is only, they need to be kind of seeded in certain areas. But once they will take over, they will start developing this reef. We will have this solid ground on which seaweed will be able to grow again. And now you have again this also three-dimensional space where like fish can hide, and so by doing this single act with one single species, then you can sort of rebuild or restart. Now you're not rebuilding, you are kind of, again, the idea of seeding, I think, is important here. This whole ecosystem is not, nature will do it on her own, but maybe not in the same timeline that is I would say enough for us to maintain a habitable planet Earth. So by actively again working on restoration, we are rebuilding ecosystems like that. And once we are maybe using sustainable approaches to be fishing in this space, one of the questions that we have, are you still fishing, extracting from the sea, or are you already cultivating the environment that you are picking some and rebuilding another part? So already, again, with this, we are helping to, or we are supporting a change of mindset. That's, again, a lot of fishing folks in Europe and all across the world are perceived as people who are emptying the sea from all the living beings that you have there. And in some cases, that is close to the truth. Now we are pursuing kind of like a new way of imagining their work as, again, warden once more of like an ecosystem where they put some, they take what is needed as well and what is available. So this is a new approach for that, combining or being kind of very blurry in the different borders of what it is to work on conservation, what it is to be a fisher folk, or like even like a sea farmer. And the part that we are, it's quite tricky in terms of regulatory approaches to do that in the sea in France. So the path of least resistance that we are using for now, in order to, again, leave time for the idea to also mature in the supporters, the administration's mind, is to work in these salt marshes, in this interface space. So not directly in the sea, but where nothing else, let's say, can grow or be done. The swamps, the salt marshes, are often perceived as kind of like, again, no real economic activity can take place there because it's not easy to build things on, etc. But those are, again, very rich environment per se, and also perfect environment to have different species grown next to one another, and then you can interlink different ponds, let's say. And then you can build, we tend to call them like permaculture systems, where the waste of one can become the nutrients of the others. Like your shrimps will move the mud. The mud will have mineral elements that will help phytoplankton bloom. Phytoplankton moves, oysters and clams can eat that, and then the water is now still rich in minerals but very transparent, and then you have a final space where you can have macroalgae that grow, and they are reoxygenating everything, and they are making sure that there is no external impact. There is nothing wasted, but also there is no there is nothing contaminating the outside environment. And so here in a very small space, you can have a lot of diversified production in a space that is considered, I would say, unsuited for production. So this is what we try to push forward, also a way to do a lot with less, and in a way that minimize the impact that you can have. This is maybe our first step before we are moving to the next one. That would be, okay, now how can I move from having no impact on the natural ecosystem to having a positive impact by, again, this restoration approach.
I had a guest in the previous episode. Mary was talking about meta-economics, compassionate economics, and what does it take for the humanity to actually believe in creating something that I feel that you pretty much are doing. It's very tangible. It's beyond the concept, I would just like, before we end for today, and I have a feeling that you can talk a lot about that, the human factor, because I mean you're working with the government, you're looking at the problems, you're finding the way where the economy can also prove or give reasons why this is important. So what are some the wisdom about the community aspect, creating the links between so many stakeholders that obviously are often in some form of competitive or maybe arrogant way, as it is part of the human nature, and what you already shared. If somebody could learn from you, if you were their mentor, what would you say?
What I would say is maybe more like, this is at least how I perceive it, and at least the way that I feel right. That doesn't mean it's true. Again, it's my own perception, but so when I started on this path, again, this I think I was left a bit cynical about the state of the world and powerless, and the sense also, I feel like, yeah, even whichever solution had been already tried and it didn't work, and this whole approach, with also the vastness of the ocean, was kind of like, oh, maybe there is something that we didn't try yet, and maybe we can at least, again, try. So I think that it's first thing would be that it's okay to feel powerless and to feel these feelings at times, and also I think that it still stays with me when I'm meeting also people who are in this state of mind where, like, yeah, but I cannot do otherwise, or it doesn't work, or like I can't, or like I have, and they do have a lot of reason why they are doing the things the way they do. Like, again, if we get back to the example of fisher folks who are like using wide nets that are kind of like dragging the bottom, trolling the bottom, and destroying, again, in some cases, those remaining oyster reefs. They are not doing that because they wake up in the morning thinking, haha, I'm gonna destroy something beautiful. They are doing that because they are already engaged in a path where they have to pay for the boat, they have to pay for a house, they have to pay for their family. They are, again, caring for their family, doing something that they know how to do, they have been trained how to do. So whenever you go to see them and say, like, what you are doing is wrong and you have to stop, then you are pushing them into a corner. And so I would say that the approach that we are having is kind of, I understand first I understand. We try to go and listen and try to learn from them before coming with solutions or recommendations. And then we for now we do definitely not go on the and giving advice. We are more like asking questions, or like what if we could do it differently. And then what we are trying to do with is also to create new models, and proving that they are not just wishes and dreams. So as I was explaining, with again this sort of like a circular aquaculture with the shrimps, etc. So this is a person that is actually doing that here in France, and we are partnering up with that person. And the goal for us is not to make a big farm together. The goal for us is to create a space, and we are opening that this month, where we are welcoming people to learn how to do exactly that. And our goal is to have these people to have like very tiny farms, but successful farms that allow them to live from what they grow with minimum impact. And these people, we see them as, again, our own seeds, our own reseeded oyster reefs that we will place in different places, and not as you need to do like I do, but more like, it's interesting what he's doing over there, because he seems to be living well. He seems to get a lot of attention. He seems to also be able to take a weekend off there and there. And I cannot do that with the way that I'm practicing. And we want people to be curious with also not just theory or guidelines, but like real people doing things in another way next to them. And because we believe this is, if you hope that someone changes, you need to provide them with a solution, like a viable one, and you need also to let them overcome their own fear of change, I believe. And that usually takes time, and I would say that having them being deciding this, I'm curious, I want to learn more, and acknowledging the fact that not all of them will work at the same pace at the same time, but that you will have more of like a ripple effect of people changing their practices. This is something that that we truly believe in. And I know that, again, I'm quite long with this answer, but there is maybe one last image that I know has helped us a lot and is very present to us and becomes from the natural world, and I think you will like it, is the idea that when you have a flock of birds that is changing direction and going left and going right, etc., the core of the bird, the bird that is the safest, is the one that is in the middle, because is far from, again, any predator. But the birds that are in the middle, they are absolutely blind. They cannot see the storm coming left or right, or the tree or the mountain. The ones who can see the danger, the ones who can see in which direction we need to go, are always the ones that are on the fringe. But this is the place that is immensely scary, because you see it, but the core is going in another direction, and you're the first one to start to move here. And your goal at this stage is not to get everyone to move with you. You cannot do that. You are just one bird. But if you take the bird on the left and the bird on the right, then at some point the whole flock will move. And it will not be linear. It will not be one and one and one and one. It will be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 10 and 100, and all of them together. And so there is a tipping point also in changing, but that needs to start with a few pioneers, a few birds who are the ones uncomfortable on the fringe, seeing what needs to be done and going and showing.
for the end, Tristan, what kind of bird do you wish you had by your side right now? Knowing that you already have people who are passionate, but what are your needs? And mind that we have just 5 minutes to finish, but what would be your needs and maybe the vision for the coming year?
For the coming year, well, we hope that the farm that we are launching, this training farm, this cool farm, gets, I would say, some visibility, some exposure, not because we want it to be famous, but we hope that it is replicated. We hope that it inspires people. We hope that we get the community bigger around these changes. Again, it's exactly the same idea of the birds. We hope that, again, we can get the birds next to us, moving in this direction. So whoever is interested, whoever is curious, more than happy to welcome their messages, their emails, their calls, and see what we can do together.
And how can people find you, Tristan? What is the best way? And are you having any public engagement in the coming months or weeks?
So the easiest way to find me would be on LinkedIn with my full name, Tristan Macquet, Macquet. Le Paysan Marin is also the name of our NGO. We tend to have, again, speaking engagements in these days, mostly in France. We will have another China trip in October because, again, China is doing a lot of good things on those topics as well. So, but yeah, I would say that writing me an email, Tristan at lepaysanmarin.fr could be one way, or LinkedIn to get in touch.
That is really fantastic. I do hope I can be one of the maybe clouds or a little bit of the good wind to give you some boost. And I appreciate so much. We need more examples of what is really happening in the grassroots, hands-on examples of that hope and faith that what I'm hearing you're saying is really the key here, that helplessness is not going to take us anywhere. And what I'm taking from this is also never think that you have a stupid question or that you are it's too late to be a beginner in a field that is already so full of people who have been fighting the good fight for a long time. So Tristan, anything else you would like to share for the end that I didn't ask and you feel is important?
I just, thank you. Thank you for having me. And again, just invite people to get interested in oysters in general, be it just to eat them, also because it will grow I would say the demand and the people who farm them, and probably also restore them. So get your shock of oysters on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And now I wish you a fantastic time with your family, and please send them my love and thank them.
Thank you very much,
All
Dalida.
right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. So this is Dalida Turkovic, Mindfulness in Action, and we'll see you next time.